We have to become the person we are meant to be first to live the life we are destined to live. We all encounter challenges, obstacles, and even dark times on that journey, but we are not alone. This podcast will give all seekers hope and understanding that others have walked that path before us. My guests will share how they overcame their challenges and what helped them turn the corner. Listening to their inspiring stories, get motivated and take action to transform into the amazing person that you really are. Your voice needs to be heard and your message must be shared. Hi, my name is Sabine Quenberg and I am your host. I am glad that you're here to listen to my podcast where you can discover how to become the more incredible version of yourself. Now, let's dive into our guest interview. I am so excited to have Dr. Ron Stotts as my guest on this first episode. He is a mindfulness expert, helping business leaders think like Einstein and create like Michelangelo, developing truly conscious business environments that are vastly more profitable and sustainable for all. After getting a Ph.D. in psychology and a doctorate in chiropractic, Dr. Ron discovered that the biggest challenge business leaders face today is they're looking outside for what can only be found within. Now, with several decades of experience, Dr. Ron has made it his mission to lead entrepreneurs on a transformational inner journey into the highest level of conscious leadership. To date, he has helped thousands of entrepreneurs, CEOs, and top executives from organizations such as AT&T, the Colts, and Lucasfilms. Dr. Ron is a 3-time best-selling author and has spoken on stages throughout Europe and the United States. Welcome, Dr. Ron. I am grateful and honored to have you as my first guest on this show. And it seems like the perfect match because my podcast is about transformation and becoming the great potential that we are. And with your expertise and experience as a transformation guide, I know our listeners are in it for a treat. So welcome.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Before we get into some questions that I'm eager to ask you, I would love to hear from you how you transformed your life when you were a young adult. Just listening to your bio, you seem to have the perfect life, the Ph.D. in psychology, the Doctorate in chiropractic, best-selling author, and the list goes on. But however, in your younger years, and you shared this with me in prior conversation, you went through some dark times. And I believe it is important for our listeners to understand that no matter where you find yourself right now, you can always transform your life. And ultimately, we all want to experience more joy, peace, and prosperity. So can you share your journey with us?
Well, at 19, I was the all-American kid. I ended up going in the Marine Corps, and it was during the Vietnam period. And that was a very difficult time. I lost a lot of friends in Vietnam, and by the time I was getting out on a medical discharge, I was literally hobbling out of the Marine Corps with a damaged knee and a crushed spirit, and really I was a mess. I was breaking up with my fiance. We're just not very dramatic. We were just going in different directions by that time. And as I went to go get the ring one evening, she announced that she was pregnant. So, back then you just get married. And so I ended up, those few years were really, they don't have terms for PTSD, and and chemical imbalances and all the things that I had back then. But I really was suicidal at that point. And I'd lost my wife, I'd lost so many friends in the war, and lost custody of my two sons. And so I got to a point where I really was suicidal, in the middle of really committing suicide, thrusting a large hunting knife into my heart. I dissolved in this white light, and it gave me a timeless experience of how much you could trust the universe. The perfection of being in that oneness allowed me to have a vision of hope that I moved forward. And, there was quite a few months of banging around and learning to quiet my mind and breathe. And that turned into exploring, working with people, learning to breathe, learning to acknowledge my feelings and get in touch with deeper levels of myself, learning to meditate. And, from that, I really began to develop the tools and interest in working with others. And of course, that's when I went on to get a Ph.D. in psychology and other degrees. And I just started using everything that had worked for me, everything that others had taught me or I'd learned on my own, with those clients that I was working with. I wished I could find somebody like me back then. It would have been a lot easier. But I guess I was me then, and so I had to take a bit more time. But it was a terrible time, but it turned out to be what guided me into a life way beyond anything I could have ever imagined or sought. I mean, I remember my dad wanted me to become a foreman for the gas company. That was his big, that would be perfect for me. And I ended up doing a bit more than that.
Isn't it so true? We have to find our own journey. I listened to the well-meant advice of my dad who said, Sabine, find a job with benefits and a good salary so you can pay your bill. Right? That's how it used to be.
Right. Yeah.
And of course, I was miserable. But I believe that we all have our journey, and meeting the right people along the way, and that finally led me to change careers and become an actress that I really truly loved to do. From my personal experience and those of my clients, at times we feel like we are not enough. We are not smart enough, and part of it, I believe, is because we get overload of information, but we don't have guidance along the way. So we buy this program and we don't get the results that we really want. And then we buy another program and there's another shiny object and we still don't get the results. And we at the end feel like it's us. We are not good enough. What is your response to this shiny object and not good enough syndrome?
When people come to me with that, I support them on really recognizing that they aren't enough. And the reason is because they're not accessing enough of who and what they are. And then we start understanding, and I guide them on that inner journey where they begin to look into their earlier childhood and experiences before whatever age they are. That can be 40, 50, 60 even, and easily. And they begin to recognize that, I've left parts of myself behind. I had that emotional experience that I didn't know how to deal with, and I left that behind. I had, parents who didn't support me in being fully in my power or being maybe as clever or smart or whatever it was that I am. And so we left that behind, and we learned to not express certain emotions and learned how to deal with our emotions in unsupportive ways. And so there's just this really large part of ourselves that we've left behind. And the journey I take people on is really going back and reconnecting with those different disparate parts, reconnecting and reintegrating them into who and what you truly are, so that you can experience yourself as a whole, authentic human being. And of course, I've asked the question all over the world, what does a child want more than anything else? And audiences seem to be in agreement that it's unconditional love and that we'll do anything to get it. So we have this program for getting love that we develop as a child, to get love, I need to be nice, I need to be good, I need to act out, I need to be special, I need to be whatever it is. But that's about looking for love outside of yourself. And that's completely appropriate as a child, because you need that connection just to survive. And so, we're raised with that, looking outside of ourselves for all the answers, everything that we need for the love, the acceptance, who I should be, who I shouldn't be. And so at some point in our life, and it might be at 20, which would be really wonderful, that for many of us in later years, we have to go back and reconnect and heal all of those parts that we've left behind, so that we can begin to shift our focus to really looking for love within ourselves. And it's that, that my 2-month program is really, that's the key focus, is let's change that program for getting love from one to looking outside of yourself for acceptance and love, to looking within, so you can learn to love and accept yourself, eventually unconditionally. And what they all discover is that they're more than enough. Quite literally, and anytime they need more, they know that, that's just an indicator that something else is ready to be healed, is matured, and is ready to be looked at. And so they go back in using the tools and methodologies that they've trained themselves in through the work, and they heal that part. And when they do, what they always discover is, so when there's a problem, that's a great thing, because it's an indicator that there's something ready to be healed. When they go in and heal that, they're accessing the very part of themselves that they need to then take their life and work up to the next level. So I understand, because of poor trainings and what people tell you, all the shortcuts and shiny objects, that you don't feel like you're enough. But in truth, you are more than enough, and you always will be. And whatever level you want to play on, that's available to you from within.
Yeah. And it is so true that we have to accept ourselves of who we are. And what you mentioned earlier, through that dark time in your life, maybe some of the listeners today, they're struggling right now, have to go through a very dark period or feeling inadequate, not enough. What is your advice that you would give someone? What was it that helped you? You shared with us you got into quietness. Is there anything else besides, of course, I would always recommend find somebody like Dr. Ron if you really would like some guidance here. But is there something that someone could do right now to overcome that?
Well, I think you have to appreciate that all the challenges in our life are created in relationship to other people. And that really is your indicator that to resolving those challenges needs to be done in relationship to other people also. And so lots of times somebody like me is really that other person. Then they do more group work, and then they expand it into their life and into their more significant relationships. But the healing, that marriage to me is not coming together and having eternal bliss. It's finding somebody who's willing to stand in the fire and unpack the bags together and really, heal all of that past together. Because you're not relying on them to fulfill you. You're not in a rescue, persecutor, victim role, that big game that limits everybody to a B- at best love. You want an A+ love, and that has to come from within yourself in relationship with others who are also playing on that level, where they're looking within and you're just supporting each other on your journey.
Share with us a good way to get in that we can really discover that inner peace and that self-love.
So the trick that I watch, and this is across the board, people come to me and they'll be sitting across from me or in a group or whatever it is. They're not breathing. They're breathing very shallowly. Sometimes if there's emotional stuff going on, they're not breathing at all. And that's the trick we've learned growing up, is stop breathing so I can go up in my head. And as long as I'm up here, I don't have to look at my feelings. So it's really a retraining of yourself to be able to go back down into your being, into your heart, into your gut. And the best way to do that is begin to just use a very simple process that I call the stop process. I created it with my partner back in, co-director of the Brain Integration Center back in the 70s. And that is, you stop, you take several breaths, you observe the O and stop, and you observe what's going on, you observe what you're feeling, you observe what's really, what's in front of me. And then you recognize your best option and you proceed. STOP. And that becomes it sounds like in the beginning you kind of have to step out of life almost, it feels like. But as you continue to do that, it really becomes a way of life. And as you continue to do that, you realize, oh, that's called being mindful and present. And as you do it even more, you realize, oh, I'm breathing, I'm always breathing, so I really don't have to stop. I'm always breathing, I'm always being observing and being aware, and I'm always proceeding because I'm in trust and resolution with what's going on. And so, that's the short path. That might take lifetimes in the Himalayas, but it is one
Right.
way to go.
Right, right. And it's interesting that you mentioned that, because as a vocal coach, breathing is so utterly important, right? You have to have that
Absolutely.
deep breathing, abdominal breathing for your support. But at the same time, I never thought of it really that you get out of your head into your heart. That's an
Yeah,
interesting fact. But yeah, oh my goodness.
yeah.
There's so many golden nuggets that you dropped here. I'm grateful. Uh, in your writings, you talked about the big mind. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Mind is a result of just a unification of who you are. That comes from as a result of the quieting and the unification of the brain, quite literally. Because as towards the end of my first program, they're healing their backlog, they're getting quieter, their imagination, creativity, and intuition is enhanced. But they come to a place where they recognize, oh, this is my highest intention. This is my compass heading. This is my purpose in life. And with that, of course, everything is much easier, because when something comes into their life, it's like, well, does that support my highest intention? If it does, you integrate it in and let everything move towards where you're going. If it doesn't, you ignore it and let it go. And in time, really, all aspects of your life get into alignment, moving towards that higher intention. And that process, quite literally, neurologically, not only integrates the whole brain, but it also quiets it and develops the forebrain, which really is your, rather than the amygdala, your overreactive emotional center running your life. The forebrain is what's really supposed to. I think back in the 70s, the National Institute of Health said this new brain area is where the stuff of angels is made. And what they're saying is that's where that perspective that, you're not just taking care of yourself, but you're taking care of everyone, because that's really what makes you safer and going to allow you to prosper. And, so you kind of go through these stages, but the mind does get quieter. Your trust and enjoyment of life is greatly enhanced. You know where you're going, you know what to do to get there. And in that quiet, you begin to understand that rather than struggling and efforting to come up with an idea, a solution, an image, or whatever it is, you really can just quiet your mind, really put out what it is you're looking for. And if you can sit there quietly and not go, gee, is that it, or struggle, or whatever, it will come in. And I think everybody's had that experience from time to time. But as a CEO, you need to have access to that all the time and any time for any length of time that you need. And so I shared, there's a research that shows that most of the top CEOs in the world don't feel like they can handle the rapid change and increased complexity of the business world today. And yet about 1%, 1 to 5%, really not only thriving in that environment, they're really, the people who are creating that rapid change. And those people are really just more conscious leaders. They've done the healing work. They've done the personal development. They've discovered in life that significant personal transformational experiences, along with regular practices, allows them to move up in consciousness. And the more conscious you are, you move beyond just this focus on this self to self being others also, and self being even a planetary concern and beyond. And so those people can really have a significant impact on society because they're big picture people. I mean, when I was a meditation teacher for decades, people would become more conscious. They'd move out of just their focus on self-development to how do I support others? How do I support the planet? And so people in business is really the same thing. As they evolve, they go through my transformational journey, my bigger program. And what they're doing is really neurologically downloading an entirely new operating system with all the upgraded software for success. They're able to access big mind so that they have this agility to access levels of thinking that otherwise they wouldn't have. I had one fellow who he's not an engineer or anything, and he had more than doubled the 9-figure business. He's got 5 9-figure businesses. He's more than doubled the value of those within the year that he's working with me. And he needed to create a hinge for something. He's got modular buildings that he was creating a hinge for. He just big-minded it, and it came in, and it was just really quite a brilliant design. And so that's, if you want to be a conscious, successful leader, entrepreneur, you have to really access who and what you are and your full capability so that you are more than it.
Wonderful what you just shared. And I truly believe the mission that you have is more needed than ever, because we do need more conscious leaders who are looking at the bigger picture, not just how I can increase my bottom line, but what is the greater good? How can we be more responsible for the environment, for this earth? Listeners here who are listening to this podcast, they are looking for something that they can transform to become a better version of themselves, to do something better, maybe even transform their business. And I know I have transformed several times in my life from one business to another business and so forth. And for some time, I wanted to transition from my business, the performing arts school that I had. But for some reason, there was always something that held me back, being afraid of letting go of that and maybe stepping into something greater and bigger that could be more scary, or I don't know if I can manage that. And I'm sure that many people are finding themselves in this situation. Is there anything that you can say to that fact that makes it easier to let go of something that was the security blanket for you for so long, to step into the new?
Research shows quite clearly, and I certainly see it in my clients all the time, that if they could just shift that fear-based scarcity model that they're coming from into a more collaborative, conscious, and caring worldview, that they will not only do better, they will do incredibly better. I mean, I watch people going through my program, and I'm not marketing the program, but just it's that easy. And within a year, they've transformed their entire life. They're literally thinking like Einstein and creating like Michelangelo. They're literally creating just incredibly successful and profitable businesses. But also, what's really important to me is those businesses are also supporting a more conscious and caring world. So, everybody wants to take care of themselves. Everybody wants to take care of their family. But they're doing it from a fear, scarcity-based way of life. In that, they don't recognize that that's holding them back. It's personally, you see people well, I see people all the time, they come in and they've got all this armor around their heart. And they don't realize that as much as that armor protected them when they were growing up, it's literally killing them now. And they have to let go of that armor so that they can breathe, so that they don't get heart attacks, so they don't get Alzheimer's, so they don't forget who they are, so they don't become so disconnected that they aren't able to really come into the world and be fully who they are and contribute to the puzzle of life in such an important way. I mean, everybody is important to that puzzle. I mean, would you want to sit down and put a big puzzle together and leave pieces out? Well, it'd be like, well, it's kind of nice. It takes every one of us, and it takes everyone stepping into that level of leadership. Leadership not as a role, but as a frame of mind. It takes people recognizing that they are important to that bigger picture, that they are vitally important and need to make that contribution that they're so capable of. And they've got to be willing to, people talk about how scary the inner work is. The truth is it's only scary for a little tiny bit because we're stepping into something new and different. Once people step into it, the worst case scenario I've ever seen, and I've worked with thousands of people, the worst case scenario is you're going to love and accept yourself more fully. I haven't had anybody go, well, that sucks. They're all, they watch that relationship with themselves be mirrored in the relationship with others. They feel more empowered and capable of creating these amazing organizations. And within those organizations, everybody feels valued and they collaborate and cooperate, so they get more committed to the mission of the company. And you create that more conscious and caring world that we really, I think, desperately need to create. I don't want to be a doomsdayer, but when I look at our educational system, our health system, our prison system, our environment, it's all failing miserably, and we simply can't afford to keep making these mistakes. And so we need conscious leadership as a means to resolve this destructive way of life. This fear-based scarcity model has to be shifted to a more abundant and love-oriented. I know that sounds a bit hippie-ish, but if you're afraid of that part, then, well, make more money then. That's okay.
You're so on point. If someone listening right now wants to go through one of your programs, wants to get in touch with you, wants to really, I got to do this. Yes, I want to be part of that conscious leadership change that we need to see in this world. How can they get in touch with you?
I think the best way is just to go to my website, ronstotts.com, and there's free materials that'll help them get deeper insights into, entrepreneurs and others can 9 insightful questions that allow them to see where they are, where they want to get to, and the division between that. My programs are explained in there fully, but they have to be willing to invest in themselves. They have to be willing to go, I am worth it. You can turn your life into one of the greatest adventures of a lifetime just by beginning that inner journey and allowing it to really expand into who and what you truly are, so you can make the impact that you're capable of making.
And there is no age limit. You can do this at any time. If you are 20 or if you're 60, 70, 80, it doesn't matter. You just have to make a decision, and you can always transform, no matter your age, right?
It's never too late to fall in love with yourself and contribute to your life and to the world. It's never too late.
This could not be a better ending with what you just said. Dr. Ron, thank you so much for being on this program and taking the time to share your expertise with our listeners. And I wish you all the best. And I sure hope that more people becoming conscious leaders. Thank you for tuning in and listening to my first episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and if so, please leave a short review, subscribe, and share this podcast with your community on social media. I truly appreciate it. This will let iTunes algorithm know that more people need to see this. Since this is the first episode of Become, I have something special. I am launching a community of seekers who want to start their journey to becoming the more amazing version of themselves. If you're interested, simply click the link in the show notes to get the details. I have free giveaways and so much more. Until the next episode, remember, we have to become the person we are meant to be first, to live the life we are destined to live.